Get your hands off that door. Lady, you people think the law's made for you? You don't belong here." The words hit like gunfire, loud and cutting through the quiet hallway of the courthouse. Conversation stopped. Papers froze in midair. All eyes turned toward the man shouting. Officer Derek Harlan, a white security officer with a red face, one hand gripping his belt, the other pointing straight at a black woman standing calmly by the entrance. Before we begin, where are you watching from? Hit subscribe. And give this story a like if you believe in justice. Now, listen closely, because what happened next shocked an entire city. Olivia Harper had walked through those courthouse doors hundreds of times in her life. But that morning was different. She wasn't there as a detective, or as a lawyer, or even as a guest. She was there to attend a public hearing about police reform, quietly, without attention, hoping to listen and learn. But fate, and Derek Harlan, had other plans. Harlan's voice cut through the air again. "Badge or not, you wait outside. I don't need attitude from another protester." Olivia's jaw tightened, but her expression stayed calm. She reached into her bag and pulled out her visitor pass, holding it up for him to see. "I'm here for the hearing," she said softly. "You can check the list." Harlan smirked, stepping closer until his breath brushed her cheek. "Lady, don't test me. I know trouble when I see it." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A young clerk in a tan suit whispered, "Sir, she's on the schedule." But Harlan ignored him. He leaned in, eyes full of disdain. "You think you can walk in here looking like that and demand respect?" And then, it happened. His hand snapped across her face. The sound cracked through the lobby like a whip. Gasps followed. Someone dropped a folder. A bailiff froze mid-step. Olivia didn't move. Her head turned slightly from the impact. But her eyes, those calm, steady eyes, never wavered. She looked right at him. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," she said quietly. A second of silence. Then Harlan laughed, short and cruel. "Is that a threat?" he said. "No," she replied, her voice steady. "It's a promise." Unknown to Harlan, Olivia's phone was recording everything, from the insults to the slap. It wasn't the first time she'd been treated like she didn't belong, but it would be the last time she let it slide. As she walked away, holding her cheek, she saw faces watching, some angry, some afraid, some pretending not to see, and one of those faces belonged to a young court intern, Sofia Delgado, clutching her phone. She'd caught it too, outside. The cold air hit Olivia's skin, and for a moment, she let herself feel the sting, not of the slap, but of the memories it stirred. She remembered her brother, Marcus, shot by police 20 years earlier, his case dismissed, his name forgotten. That pain had driven her into law school, into the detective's badge, into fighting for justice from within a system that too often protected the wrong people. And now, the same system had struck her again, but this time, it had picked the wrong woman. Harlan watched from inside, puffed with arrogance, exchanging jokes with another guard. "She'll file a complaint," he said, chuckling. "They always do, and it'll go nowhere, just like the rest." He didn't know that Olivia Harper wasn't just another visitor. She was an attorney, a former detective, and soon, someone far more powerful than he could imagine. That night, at her small apartment on Chicago's South Side, Olivia sat at her kitchen table. The light flickered over open files, complaints, reports, and names. Derek Harlan's name appeared 12 times. 12 complaints. 12 times the department had looked away. She picked up her phone and called someone listed only as L. Hayes. The line clicked. "I need your help," she said. "The courthouse footage. It's already being tampered with. I want everything before it disappears." The voice on the other end was calm. Already working on it. You were right. They're scrubbing it. But I've got access to the backup feed. Olivia closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. Good. Send it all to me. As she hung up, her daughter Ava walked in, sleepy-eyed. Mom, what happened? Olivia touched her cheek, faintly red now. Just another reminder, she said softly, of why I do what I do. Ava frowned. You're not going to let it go, are you? No, Olivia said, voice firm. Not this time. Meanwhile, in a quiet bar a few blocks away, Harlan poured himself a drink, boasting to a friend in uniform. She's filing something, sure. But I've got friends upstairs. They'll back my story. They always do. His friend hesitated. You sure you didn't go too far? Man? Harlan smirked. She asked for it. You can't talk back to me in my courthouse. He took a sip, unaware that his arrogance had already been recorded, shared, and sent. The following morning, a clip began spreading online. It wasn't public yet, just whispers among courthouse staff. But it was enough to start a storm. The slap, the words, the smirk. Everything. Olivia knew what was coming. She looked out her window toward the city skyline, whispering to herself. I'm done surviving injustice. It's time to expose it. The wheels of justice were slow, but Olivia had something stronger. Evidence, resolve, and the truth. And deep down, she knew this was no longer just her fight. It was the fight of every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong in a place built for justice. As for Derek Harlan, he had no idea who he'd just struck. And soon, he would. That night, after the incident. Olivia Harper sat at her kitchen table, the same table she'd used to teach her daughter math when she couldn't afford tutoring, the same table where she'd once studied for the detective's exam, believing she could fix a broken system from within. The courthouse slap kept replaying in her mind, not the pain itself, but the arrogance behind it, the way Derek Harlan looked at her, certain he'd get away with it, like he always had. The video Sofia Delgado sent her confirmed it, clear as day. The insult, the blow, the smirk. Yet Olivia knew too well how the system worked. Justice didn't move on truth alone. It moved on power, and she was about to use hers differently than ever before. She leaned forward, hands clasped, and whispered to herself, "We fight smart this time." The next morning, she drove to the law library near Jackson Boulevard. No press, no lawyer, just her, a thermos of coffee, and a stack of casebooks. Harper versus Harlan. The title looked surreal as she typed it into the system. But this wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a message to him, to the courthouse, to everyone watching. She drafted her own complaint, every word chosen like a bullet. Assault, misconduct, racial discrimination, evidence tampering. When she finished, she printed the document and slid it into a folder labeled simply Day 1, at home that evening. Her daughter Ava appeared in the doorway. "You really filed it?" she asked softly. Olivia nodded. "I did, and I'm not backing down." Ava bit her lip. "Mom, people like him. They don't change. They just get meaner." Olivia turned, her voice steady. "Then they'll face someone meaner for justice." Across town, Derek Harlan sat slumped on his couch, a half-empty bottle beside him. His wife, Deborah, paced the kitchen. 12 complaints. "Derek," she said sharply. "You promised after the last one." He cut her off. "They were all lies. You know how these people twist things?" He sipped again, jaw tight. Deborah sighed. "Maybe it's time to take responsibility." He glared. "For what? Doing my job?" She was being difficult. He turned on the TV, muttering, "They'll cover me. They always do." But not this time. Inside a dim apartment near the Loop, Lucas Hayes, the anonymous hacker Olivia had contacted, sat in front of 3 glowing monitors. He wasn't just a hacker. He was an ex-IT technician fired for uncovering corruption inside the courthouse database. Since then, he'd lived quietly, watching, collecting. When Olivia called, he didn't hesitate. "I found your guy," he texted her. "Harlan's tied to Captain Robert Klein. They've been deleting footage and burying complaints for years. I have proof, emails, body cam logs, payout records." Olivia's reply came within seconds. "Send everything. We go to court in 2 weeks." That night, Olivia read through the files. 12 cases, all eerily similar. Harlan had shoved a disabled veteran. He'd cursed at a Latina mother in front of her kids. He'd detained a black attorney for matching a description. Every complaint had been quietly closed by Captain Klein. Every settlement signed and sealed with taxpayer money. Over $1.8 million paid out, all hidden behind administrative discretion. Olivia pressed her palms against the table, whispering, "Not this time." Days passed quickly. The case gained quiet traction. Inside the courthouse, whispers spread. "Did you hear? The woman's suing him herself." Some laughed, others didn't. Sofia Delgado, the intern who filmed the slap, was torn between fear and duty. Late one evening, she met Olivia in a cafe near Dearborn Street. "I want to testify," Sofia said, voice trembling. "But if I do, I'll lose my internship." Olivia looked at her kindly. "Sofia, you won't lose your future by standing for what's right. You'll build it." Sofia nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. "Then I'll do it." Meanwhile, Harlan and his lawyer, Michael Voss, began their counterattack. Voss was slick, expensive, and ruthless. "We'll say she was aggressive," Voss said during their meeting. "We'll frame it as a misunderstanding, a safety concern. You were following protocol." Harlan smirked. "She's one of those activists, right? This'll die down. They always do." Voss leaned back. "Just make sure no new footage appears. And if anyone contacts you, ignore it." But Olivia had already anticipated that. Lucas had traced attempts to delete files from the security network. He sent her the logs, timestamps, usernames, even Captain Klein's credentials. It was more than corruption. It was conspiracy, late one night. As Olivia prepared her witness statements, her phone buzzed, unknown number. She picked up, silence. Then a deep voice, "Drop the case, or you'll regret it." The call ended before she could speak. Her heart pounded, but fear turned to resolve. She called back, recording her own message. "This is Olivia Harper. Every threat you make will only build my case stronger. So go ahead. I'll be waiting." She ended the call and saved the recording. The next day, she visited her old precinct. Some officers greeted her warmly. Others avoided her eyes. She found Commissioner James Ellis in his office, a man she'd worked under for years. He looked weary, cautious. "Olivia," he said, "I heard about your case. You're poking a hornet's nest. Derek's connected. Klein protects his own." Olivia leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time someone stops pretending they don't see the nest." Ellis sighed. "You've got courage. I'll give you that. But be careful. These men, they play dirty." She smiled faintly. "So do I. When it comes to justice..." That evening, she and Ava sat on the couch. The TV flashed headlines. Former Detective Files, civil suit against courthouse officer. The story hadn't hit national news yet, but Chicago was watching. "Mom," Ava said quietly, "what if they lie? What if the judge doesn't believe you?" Olivia turned to her daughter, her voice low, steady. "Then I'll still know I told the truth, and that matters more than their lies." Across the city, Harlan scrolled through comments on his private message board. Some called him a hero, others called him a disgrace. The contradiction gnawed at him, for the first time. He felt the edges of fear. He poured another drink and muttered, "She won't win. She can't." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. 2 weeks later, Olivia's apartment was lined with folders, color-coded evidence, witness statements, cross-examination notes. Lucas dropped off one final USB drive. "This one," he said, "is what ends him." Inside were the unedited surveillance feeds, 5 angles of the lobby, capturing the slap, the reactions, the chaos, no edits, no missing frames, proof, that night. Olivia printed the final exhibit. Her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just a trial. It was the moment she'd spent her whole life walking toward. The courthouse that had once humiliated her would soon become her stage for truth. As she packed her files into a leather briefcase, Ava placed a small photo on top, Olivia's late brother Marcus, smiling in his police uniform. "For luck," Ava said. Olivia touched the photo gently. "No, baby," she whispered, "for justice." Outside, rain began to fall over Chicago, tapping softly against the window. Olivia stood by the glass, watching lightning flicker over the skyline. Somewhere across town, Derek Harlan was doing the same, staring out his own window, unaware that the woman he'd slapped would soon be the one holding his career and his freedom in her hands. The courtroom was packed that morning, every seat taken, every whisper echoing against the wood-paneled walls. Some came for justice, others came for spectacle, but all eyes landed on one woman, Olivia Harper, standing tall, calm, and unshaken. She wore a simple navy suit, her natural curls pulled back neatly, her gaze fixed straight ahead. Across the room sat Derek Harlan, in a dark uniform he didn't deserve to wear, flanked by his lawyer, Michael Voss. Harlan's expression was smug, almost amused, to him. This was another nuisance, just another angry black woman making noise, one he was sure he'd silence like all the rest. But today, the silence would be his undoing. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Abigail Coleman, stern and composed, took her seat. "This court will come to order in the matter of Harper versus Harlan." Olivia's name rolled across the courtroom, and for a brief moment, she felt the tremor of her late brother's voice in her heart. Marcus, the officer who never got justice. She took a deep breath. "Ready?" "Your Honor." Michael Voss rose first, straightening his tie like a man performing for a camera. "Your Honor, the defense intends to prove that my client, Officer Harlan, acted within the scope of his duty. The plaintiff, Ms. Harper, displayed aggressive behavior and refused to comply with courthouse procedure." His tone was smooth, almost rehearsed. Harlan sat beside him, nodding slowly, smirking at Olivia like she was already defeated. Olivia didn't flinch when her turn came. She spoke with quiet power. "Your Honor, I stand before you not only as a woman seeking justice, but as a former detective who knows how systems can hide the truth. My goal is simple, to show the court what really happened that day." Her voice carried through the room, steady as stone. The first witness was Harlan himself. Voss led him through a carefully crafted story. "Tell the court what happened on April 10th, he said. Harlan straightened. "She came in acting entitled," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. "She ignored instructions, tried to bypass security. When I told her to wait, she got hostile, started shouting. I acted to maintain order." Olivia's eyebrow lifted slightly, but she stayed silent. "And you say she struck you first?" Voss asked, playing along. "Yes," Harlan replied, clutching his arm as if reliving trauma. "I had no choice but to defend myself." There were murmurs in the gallery. A few jurors exchanged glances. It was an absurd lie, but a dangerous one. Olivia knew that without proof. Emotion often swayed truth. Then came the edited footage. Voss presented a short clip on the courtroom monitor. It showed only fragments, the moments before and after, but never the slap itself. Olivia studied it closely. The time code jumped twice, frames missing. Classic tampering. As you can see, Your Honor, Voss continued. Ms. Harper appeared confrontational. My client reacted proportionally. Judge Coleman leaned forward. Is this the only footage available? Voss nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The security system overwrites itself every 72 hours. Olivia smiled faintly. A smile only Lucas Hayes would understand, because she knew that was a lie. When cross-examination began, she stepped forward, notes in hand. Officer Harlan, she began, voice low, even. You've worked courthouse security for 18 years, correct? He nodded. And in those 18 years, how many citizen complaints have been filed against you? He hesitated. A few. 12, she corrected, holding up the documents. 12, all closed without investigation. Can you explain that? Harlan's eyes narrowed. I don't recall. Of course, Olivia said. Her tone sharpened. And on April 10th, you claim I was hostile and non-compliant. Did you file an incident report? No, he said quickly. It was resolved on site. Resolved? She asked, taking a step closer. By slapping a woman across the face? Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Harlan's jaw tightened. Objection, Voss snapped, but Judge Coleman waved it off. Overruled. Answer the question, Harlan stammered. I didn't slap anyone. Olivia leaned slightly forward, her voice dropping to a measured whisper that filled the silence. You didn't? She said softly. Then how do you explain the handprint on my face in the photo taken less than 1 minute after you assaulted me? She held up a printed image. The jury looked, grim-faced. The red mark was undeniable. Voss objected again, claiming manipulation. The judge allowed it for review. Olivia pressed on. Officer Harlan, did you also not threaten Sofia Delgado, the intern who recorded you? His eyes darted toward the gallery. I don't know any Sofia. Funny, Olivia said, because she's sitting right there. Sofia lifted her head, trembling but resolute. The moment hit Harlan like a blow. During recess, Harlan cornered Voss in the hallway. You said the footage was gone? Voss frowned. It is, or should be. Harlan's hands shook. She's got something. I can see it in her eyes. Voss adjusted his cufflinks. Then you'd better pray it's nothing more than a bluff. When court resumed, Prosecutor Elena Ramirez entered as a supporting counsel for Olivia, her presence quiet but powerful. She whispered, You're doing good. They're losing control. Olivia nodded, back in her seat. She looked toward the jury. The defense wants to make this about attitude, not evidence. But justice doesn't care about tone, it cares about truth. Then came a sudden turn. Sarah Mitchell, a Chicago Tribune reporter sitting in the back row, began live posting updates on X. Within minutes, the hashtag Justice for Olivia began trending. Clips from previous complaints against Harlan resurfaced. Citizens began recognizing his face, the same officer who'd been accused of harassment in 2 other viral incidents years prior. The courtroom buzzed with tension as phones lit up. Journalists typing furiously. Harlan grew restless. His confidence cracked. He whispered to Voss. She's turning the crowd against me, Voss hissed back. Crowds don't decide cases. Juries do. Stay quiet. As the day went on, Olivia presented her first small victory, a sworn statement from a courthouse janitor who'd overheard Harlan boasting about putting people in their place. The judge allowed it into evidence, for the first time. The jury saw cracks in the facade. Harlan shifted in his seat, sweat forming at his collar. Olivia closed her file and met his gaze. You said earlier you were maintaining order, she said. But tell me, when did humiliation become part of your job description? Voss objected again. But Judge Coleman leaned forward. Sustained, she said softly, though her tone carried meaning. The question hung in the air anyway. As the session neared its end, Judge Coleman addressed both parties. "We'll adjourn until tomorrow. The court expects all evidentiary materials to be presented without further delay." Her gavel struck once. Harlan exhaled sharply, jaw clenched. Olivia gathered her folders, her movements unhurried, deliberate, before leaving. She leaned toward him and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "Tomorrow, the truth walks in with me." Outside the courthouse, the air was thick with murmurs and flashing cameras. Reporters swarmed her, shouting questions. "Ms. Harper, what's your response to the defense's claim that you provoked the altercation?" Olivia stopped on the courthouse steps, looking directly into the cameras. "No one provokes injustice," she said firmly. "It provokes itself." Then she walked away, leaving the crowd buzzing. That night, she sat by her window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Ava came beside her, handing her a mug of tea. "I saw the news," Ava said softly. "You're trending everywhere." Olivia smiled faintly. "Let them talk," she murmured. "Tomorrow, we show them what truth looks like." Across town, Harlan wasn't sleeping. He paced his living room, the echo of Olivia's calm voice replaying in his head. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." He poured another drink, but even the whiskey couldn't drown that line out. He'd spent his career intimidating people, silencing complaints, and walking free. But something about her, the way she never flinched, made him uneasy. For the first time in years, Derek Harlan felt fear, and he didn't even know yet how deep Olivia Harper's case would cut. Tomorrow, the evidence would surface. Tomorrow, the mask would fall, and for the first time, the man who had slapped his power into others' faces would face someone who could take it all away. The next morning, the courtroom was silent before the storm. Every juror sat straighter, sensing something was about to happen. Even Judge Coleman's expression carried quiet anticipation. Olivia Harper stood at the plaintiff's table, a single flash drive in her hand. The evidence Derek Harlan swore didn't exist. She'd barely slept, but her mind was sharp, steady, and ready. Across from her, Harlan fidgeted with his tie, whispering angrily to Michael Voss. "You said she had nothing," he hissed. Voss, tight-lipped, whispered back. "Then she's bluffing. Stay calm." But she wasn't bluffing. Today was the day the truth walked in. "Your Honor," Olivia began, her voice even, "I request permission to present new evidence obtained through a lawful court order." Judge Coleman nodded. "Proceed." Olivia handed the bailiff the flash drive. The lights dimmed as a large screen flickered to life. The footage began, unedited, untouched. 5 angles of the courthouse lobby from that morning. The entire room leaned forward. There was Harlan at the door, barking insults. There was Olivia, standing calmly, showing her visitors pass. And then came the sound. Sharp, undeniable, the slap echoing through the marble hall. Gasps erupted in the courtroom. Even the jurors winced. Harlan's face drained of color. He turned toward Voss, eyes wide. "You said that was deleted," he whispered hoarsely. Voss swallowed hard, but said nothing. On the screen, the moment replayed from another angle. Closer this time. The aggression, the sneer, the mockery. And then, after the slap, Olivia's soft words, "You just made the worst mistake of your life." The silence that followed was heavier than any verdict. Olivia turned back to the judge. This footage was recovered from the courthouse's secondary backup server, which certain officers believed had been erased. My team, with the court's permission, retrieved it lawfully. Judge Coleman raised a brow. "And who exactly is your team? Miss Harper?" Olivia paused, then gestured to the back of the courtroom. A young man stood up, Lucas Hayes, quiet, confident. "A former courthouse IT technician." Olivia said. He was fired 3 years ago for reporting unauthorized footage deletions. He'll testify that Officer Harlan and Captain Robert Klein used administrative overrides to conceal misconduct complaints. The courtroom erupted, reporters scribbled, phones lit up, Judge Coleman banged her gavel. "Order," she commanded. "We will have order in this courtroom." The noise settled, but the tension didn't. Voss rose, his composure slipping. "Your Honor, this so-called evidence may have been tampered with. The chain of custody is unclear." "Not unclear," Olivia interrupted. "Every frame was verified by an independent forensic analyst. The metadata confirms it's untouched." She handed a printed report to the clerk. "Signed and notarized." As the footage ended, Olivia turned to Harlan. "Officer Harlan," she said, "do you still claim you acted in self-defense?" He didn't answer. She stepped closer. "Do you deny striking me?" He looked down. "Do you deny threatening Ms. Delgado after realizing she filmed you?" Her voice rose slightly now, not in anger, but in precision. "Or sending anonymous messages to intimidate witnesses?" She lifted her phone, displaying screenshots of texts traced to his number. The words glowed on the screen. "You talk. You'll regret it." Judge Coleman's expression hardened. "Officer Harlan, is that your number?" Silence. He shifted in his seat. "Answer the question," the judge said sharply. "Finally," Harlan muttered. "Yes, Your Honor." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Then, Olivia's next move came like thunder. "Your Honor, I call Malik Thompson to the stand." The doors at the back opened, and a man in a gray suit entered, calm, tall, and serious. He took the oath and sat down. "Mr. Thompson," Olivia began, "please state your profession." "I'm an attorney," he said. "I used to work in this very courthouse." "And have you had prior interactions with Officer Harlan?" Malik's jaw tightened. "Yes, 2 years ago. He detained me without cause, accused me of forging my bar ID. I filed a complaint. It vanished. No record. No hearing." He paused, eyes locked on Harlan. "That's when I learned the system was protecting him." Olivia nodded. "And do you have any additional evidence regarding that incident?" Malik reached into his briefcase and held up a small memory card. "I do. This card contains unedited footage I received from a janitor who witnessed the event. He kept it because he feared the truth would disappear." The clerk loaded the video. On screen, Harlan's face appeared again, this time yelling at Malik, calling him boy, threatening to drag him out in cuffs. The courtroom froze. Harlan looked like a man watching his own career burn to ash. When the footage ended, Olivia turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern. Years of abuse hidden under bureaucracy." The jury nodded silently. They didn't need more convincing. The truth was written across every screen, every word, every face in that room. Then came Harlan's breaking point. He slammed his hand on the table. "You people are all the same," he shouted, voice trembling with rage. "You twist everything. You act like victims." The bailiff stepped forward. "Order, officer." Judge Coleman's gavel struck again. "Mr. Harlan, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." But Olivia stood quietly, staring at him, eyes unwavering. "This isn't about race, Derek," she said softly. "It's about decency. You forgot what that means." Harlan's rage crumbled into silence. His lawyer sat frozen, speechless. The man who once barked orders now stared at the floor. Realizing his authority was gone, the jury saw it too, the shift, the defeat. But Olivia wasn't done. She introduced the last piece, a series of internal emails between Harlan and Captain Klein, discussing problematic individuals and how to handle complaints quietly. Each email stamped with dates and signatures. The audience gasped again. It was the smoking gun. Judge Coleman took a long breath. "This evidence will be reviewed by the District Ethics Committee," she said gravely. "But for now, this court acknowledges its relevance to the pattern of misconduct." As the court recessed for lunch, reporters rushed out to break the story. Harper's evidence shocked City. One headline read within minutes. Outside, protesters began gathering with signs reading "Justice for Olivia and no more hidden abuse." Olivia stayed inside, sitting quietly at her table. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed her binder. She wasn't shaking from fear. She was shaking from release. Meanwhile, Harlan sat in a holding room with his lawyer. "We can still fix this," Voss muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "We can negotiate." Harlan laughed bitterly. "Negotiate what? My job? My life? She's already taken it." He leaned back, staring at the wall. "All because I couldn't keep my mouth shut." That evening, as the city lights began to fade, Olivia drove home, exhausted but composed. Ava met her at the door, worry etched across her face. "Did you win?" she asked. Olivia smiled faintly. "Not yet," she said, "but today, we broke the silence." Ava hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you." Olivia looked over her daughter's shoulder, whispering, "I'm doing this so you'll never have to." Across town, Derek Harlan sat in his dark apartment, the glow of his phone screen illuminating the words, "Suspension pending investigation." His wife's side of the bed was empty. She'd taken their son and left that afternoon. He stared at his reflection in the black screen, whispering, "What have I done?" For the first time in years, the silence around him was deafening. The next morning, headlines filled every paper in Chicago. "Security officer exposed in courtroom scandal." Footage confirms assault at federal courthouse. Olivia Harper becomes face of reform. The city had chosen its side, and though the fight wasn't over, one thing was clear. Truth had walked into that courtroom, and it wasn't leaving the next morning. The courthouse overflowed with reporters, activists, and curious citizens. What began as a civil trial had become a national reckoning. Olivia Harper walked through the same doors where she'd once been slapped, but now every camera followed her every step. She looked calm, composed, unflinching, dressed in a tailored navy uniform with polished silver buttons, a symbol of quiet strength. She wasn't just a plaintiff anymore. She was the face of justice in a city that had too long looked away. Inside, the energy was different. Even the air felt charged. Officer Derek Harlan sat at the defense table, his head low, his arrogance gone. His lawyer, Michael Voss, looked pale and defeated. The night before, another leak had surfaced. Emails showing Voss had advised Harlan to lie on the stand. Olivia had seen corruption before, but watching it crumble in real time was something else. Judge Coleman entered, and the room rose. "Court is now in session." Her gavel fell once. "We will continue where we left off." Olivia stood. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to submit one final exhibit." She handed a sealed folder to the clerk. Inside was a letter, signed by Commissioner James Ellis, the city's police commissioner. Judge Coleman unfolded it slowly. Scanning the page, her eyes lifted toward Olivia. "Is this accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor," Olivia said. "It pertains to my position within the Chicago Police Department." The judge's brow furrowed. "And that position is?" Olivia took a breath, steady but measured. "Effective as of this morning, I have been appointed Chief of Police for the city of Chicago." The courtroom gasped. Cameras clicked in a frenzy. Harlan's head jerked up, disbelief flashing in his eyes. "What?" he muttered under his breath. Olivia turned, meeting his stare. "Yes, Officer Harlan," she said, her tone even but cutting. "The woman you called out of place, The one you humiliated is now your commanding officer." The silence that followed was so deep it felt sacred. Judge Coleman nodded slowly. "This court acknowledges the submission. Please proceed. Chief Harper." For a moment, Olivia looked around the room, at the jury, the judge, the press, the citizens standing in the back. "This isn't just about me," she began. "It's about a system that let men like Derek Harlan believe they were untouchable, a system that made victims afraid to speak, because they knew no one would listen. But today, they're listening." Her voice didn't rise, it carried, calm, deliberate, commanding. She turned toward Harlan. "You called me out that day. Officer, you told me I didn't belong, but the truth is, I belonged more than you ever did, because I respect what this badge stands for, even when others have forgotten." Harlan shifted uncomfortably. "You think this changes anything?" He spat. "You're just another politician wearing a badge." Olivia stepped closer. "No," she said, voice low but powerful. "I'm a cop who's seen what corruption does, and I'm ending it." She reached into her folder and pulled out a paper. "Derek Harlan, by the authority vested in me as Chief of Police, you are hereby terminated from duty, effective immediately." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Harlan stood abruptly. "You can't do that," he shouted. Judge Coleman pounded her gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" But Olivia didn't flinch. "I can, and I just did." Harlan's voice cracked. "This is revenge." Olivia shook her head slowly. "No, this is justice." She turned toward the bailiff. "Remove his badge." The bailiff hesitated for half a second, then stepped forward. The sound of metal clinking against the table echoed through the room as the badge landed in front of Olivia. Harlan's shoulders sagged. For years, that piece of metal had been his shield, his power, his mask. Now it was gone. Commissioner Ellis, seated in the front row, rose quietly. "Your Honor, the department supports Chief Harper's action," he said firmly. "The city will cooperate fully with the court's findings." The judge nodded. "Duly noted, Officer Harlan. Correction, Mr. Harlan. You are hereby in contempt of court for perjury and evidence tampering. You will be remanded into custody pending sentencing." The bailiff approached, securing handcuffs around his wrists. Harlan's defiance cracked completely as the cuffs clicked shut. "You destroyed me," he muttered under his breath. Olivia met his eyes one last time. "No, Derek, you destroyed yourself the moment you forgot what your oath meant." Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted. Chants of justice for Olivia filled the air. Reporters rushed the steps, microphones thrust forward. "Chief Harper, what's your first order of business?" one shouted. Olivia stopped on the steps, her daughter Ava beside her, her hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Accountability," she said clearly, "from top to bottom." The cameras flashed, but Olivia didn't pose. She just stood there, strong, resolute, and calm. Back inside, Harlan sat alone in a holding cell, staring at the walls. The echo of his own words haunted him. "You don't belong here." Now he didn't. He'd built his identity on fear, and fear was all he had left. As the guards led him away, a journalist in the hallway shouted, "Do you have anything to say to Chief Harper?" Harlan stopped for a moment. "Yeah," he said bitterly. "Tell her power doesn't make her right." The guard nudged him forward, but he added quietly, almost to himself, "Maybe she'll use it better than I did." That afternoon, the courtroom reconvened briefly for closing remarks. Olivia stood once more, her voice measured and calm. "Your Honor, this case was never about money. It was about truth. I don't ask for sympathy, only recognition that justice can exist, even in flawed places." She looked toward the jury. "What happened to me happens to countless others whose stories never reach this room. This verdict isn't for me. It's for them." Judge Coleman nodded solemnly. This court thanks you, Chief Harper, for your courage. The jury will deliberate and return tomorrow. As Olivia gathered her files, the judge spoke softly. Chief Harper, she said, Chicago's lucky to have you. Olivia gave a small nod. Thank you, Your Honor. Let's hope it stays that way. Outside, as dusk fell over the city, Olivia stood near the courthouse steps, looking up at the building. The same building that had humiliated her now stood as a monument to her strength. Ava joined her quietly. Mom, how does it feel? Olivia smiled faintly. Like peace, she said, and like it's just beginning. Ava squeezed her hand. Grandma would be proud. Olivia looked at her daughter, eyes soft. She taught me something long ago. That justice isn't about winning. It's about changing what people accept as normal. That's what today was. Meanwhile, across the city, Commissioner Ellis held a press conference. Effective immediately, he announced. Chief Olivia Harper will lead a new internal division for accountability and ethics. Her authority extends to reviewing all past misconduct complaints within the department. Reporters asked about Harlan's fate. Ellis answered simply, he'll face the same justice he denied others. That night, Olivia returned home. The city lights shimmered outside her window, casting long reflections across the table where her case files once lay. Now, the table was empty except for one small frame, her brother Marcus in his uniform. Smiling, she placed her hand gently on the glass. We did it, she whispered. We finally did it. And somewhere downtown, in a jail cell that smelled of concrete and regret, Derek Harlan stared at the wall, realizing that for the first time in his life, he'd been forced to listen. The woman he had once called out of place had just taken his place. In power, in truth, and in history. The next day, the courthouse overflowed again, this time not with anger, but anticipation. Reporters lined the marble steps, waiting for the verdict that had captured the nation's attention. Inside, the jury filed in, solemn and focused. Olivia Harper stood at the plaintiff's table, composed and dignified, her uniform crisp, her face calm but unreadable. Across the aisle, Derek Harlan sat in his suit, wrists free but spirit shackled. The arrogance that once defined him had drained away, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Judge Coleman adjusted her glasses, her voice steady. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson, a middle-aged black woman with tears in her eyes, rose. We have, Your Honor. She handed a folded document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The room fell silent. Every breath held. Judge Coleman read aloud. In the case of Harper versus Harlan, we, the jury, find the defendant liable on all counts: assault, misconduct, and obstruction of justice. Damages awarded, $750,000. The words hung in the air, powerful and final. Olivia closed her eyes for a brief second, whispering a silent thank you to her brother Marcus, to her mother, to every name forgotten by a system that failed them. Harlan's shoulders slumped, his head dropping into his hands. Michael Voss, his lawyer, said nothing. His reputation was finished. Reporters outside began sending breaking alerts. Verdict in Harper case. Justice served. Olivia stood, her voice calm as she addressed the court. Your Honor, I wish to make one clarification regarding the damages. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. Olivia continued. I will not accept a single dollar for myself. The full amount will be donated to the newly formed Anti-Bias Initiative, a training program for officers and courthouse staff citywide. Justice isn't vengeance, it's reform. A murmur of admiration rippled through the room. Even Judge Coleman paused, visibly moved. Your actions speak louder than your words. Chief Harper, she said softly. Harlan lifted his head, eyes red. Why? He asked hoarsely. Why give it away? Olivia looked at him, her gaze steady. Because I don't need your money to heal, she replied. I need to make sure no one else endures what I did. He said nothing, but for the first time. There was something different in his eyes. Remorse, fragile and late, but real. Outside. The press surrounded Olivia as she stepped onto the courthouse steps. Microphones swarmed her from every direction. Chief Harper, how do you feel about the verdict? One shouted. She stopped and spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the crowd. I feel hopeful, she said, not because of what was won in court, but because of what it means for our city. We can't rewrite the past, but we can build a future where justice isn't selective. Cameras flashed, recording every word behind her. Ava stood proudly, clutching her mother's hand. My mom taught me that courage doesn't mean fighting every battle, Ava told a reporter nearby. It means choosing the right one and seeing it through. Hours later, as the courthouse emptied, Derek Harlan was led away in handcuffs. His appeal had already been denied after the discovery of tampered files linked directly to him. 2 officers escorted him down the hallway where he'd once ruled with arrogance. Reporters called his name, but he didn't look up. Mr. Harlan, any regrets? One asked. He hesitated for a moment, his voice breaking. Yeah, he muttered. That I forgot what the badge was for. The soundbite spread instantly, for the first time. His words were honest, but they came far too late. That evening, Olivia met with Commissioner Ellis and her reform team in the CPD headquarters. The building buzzed with cautious optimism. We've already started the audit, Ellis said, sliding a report across the table. Dozens of old complaints are being reopened. You've lit a fire under this department. Olivia nodded. Then let's keep it burning, but let's make sure it gives light, not heat. Her reforms were sweeping: mandatory bias training, independent review boards, and a whistleblower protection program. Within weeks, the anti-bias initiative she funded would train more than 500 officers and staff. Chicago was changing, and for once, it was changing in the right direction. Later that night, Olivia sat on her balcony overlooking the quiet skyline. The wind was cool, the city lights shimmering like scattered hope. Ava joined her with 2 mugs of tea. You did it, she said softly. Olivia smiled faintly. No, she replied. We did it. Everyone who stood up when it wasn't easy. They're the real heroes. Ava leaned against her shoulder. You think people like Harlan ever really change? Olivia looked out at the horizon. Some do, she said. Some learn when they finally have to listen. Across town, in a small detention facility, Derek Harlan wrote in a journal given to him by a prison counselor. His first entry was just 1 line. For the first time, I know how it feels to be powerless. He stared at it for a long time before adding another line. Maybe that's where change begins. Meanwhile, in homes across Chicago, people replayed the courtroom footage on their phones. The slap, the reveal, the justice. Social media filled with messages of respect and pride. Hashtags like Justice for Olivia and Reform in Action trended nationwide for a moment. The city that had seen too much division felt united in purpose. Before bed, Olivia looked at the old framed photograph on her nightstand. Her brother Marcus in his blue uniform, smiling under a summer sun long gone. She touched the frame and whispered, You can rest now. Then she turned off the light. Justice had been served. But for Olivia Harper, it wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something bigger, something brighter. The slap that was meant to humiliate her had instead awakened a city, and from that day forward, every officer who walked into that courthouse would see her portrait on the wall, not as a victim, but as the chief who turned pain into progress. 6 months later, Chicago looked different, not in skyline or traffic or noise, but in spirit. The headlines that once screamed, "Scandal at the courthouse," now read, "Chief Harper's reforms cut complaints by 65%. Inside the Chicago Police Department. The culture had begun to shift. Officers greeted civilians differently. Bias training wasn't just a checkbox. It was lived, enforced, and tracked. Cameras in courthouses, precincts, and patrol cars streamed to a new oversight center Olivia had built on the South Side, staffed with civilians and former officers who believed in accountability. It was progress, slow, imperfect, but real. Olivia Harper had become more than a police chief. She was now a national voice for reform. Yet, beneath all the praise, she carried quiet scars that never fully healed. Every speech, every policy meeting, every television interview reminded her why she fought. She hadn't forgotten that slap. She had just turned it into something greater. That October morning, Olivia stood before hundreds at the National Police Reform Conference in Washington, D.C. The stage lights reflected softly on her uniform, the gold badge gleaming near her heart. 6 months ago, she began, her voice steady. I was told I didn't belong in a courthouse. Today, I stand before you as proof that belonging isn't granted. It's claimed. The audience rose in applause. Cameras flashed. But Olivia didn't smile for the cameras. She smiled for her daughter, seated in the front row, and for her city, which was finally learning to breathe again. Justice, she continued, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the courage to face it with integrity. Her words echoed through the hall. After the speech, journalists swarmed her for questions. Chief Harper, what's next for Chicago? One asked. She replied calmly. Healing and consistency. Reforms mean nothing if they fade after the headlines disappear. Her tone was gentle but firm. She knew the real work was in the quiet days that followed the noise. Later. She walked out onto the steps of the Capitol, pausing to take in the view. The autumn breeze brushed her face, and for a moment, she allowed herself to feel peace, a peace earned through struggle. Back in Chicago, Derek Harlan was serving his 24-month sentence at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. The man who once barked orders now swept floors in silence. The first few weeks had been defiant rage, but that rage gave way to reflection. He attended mandatory counseling, but what truly changed him was a letter. It came from an anonymous sender, written simply, "Redemption starts when you stop defending what broke you." He read that line every night, slowly. The man who once viewed apology as weakness began to write his own. His first letter was to Olivia. He didn't expect her to respond, and she didn't, but she read it. In it, he wrote, "You were right. I forgot what the badge stood for. I can't undo what I did, but I can spend the rest of my life helping others not become me." Olivia folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, not as forgiveness, but as a reminder that even broken men could learn. Ava, now 17, had started a law internship downtown. She shadowed attorneys, took notes, and spoke at youth conferences about justice and courage. "My mom didn't just win a case," she told a classroom of students one day. "She won back the meaning of respect." Olivia saw her daughter's speeches online late at night, pride softening her tired eyes. "She's stronger than I ever was," she whispered once to Commissioner Ellis, who smiled and said, "No, Chief, she just had a good teacher." Within months, Olivia's reforms inspired other cities, Detroit, Atlanta, Los Angeles, to adopt similar programs. She testified before Congress about the success of Chicago's anti-bias initiative, reporting a 40% increase in community trust and a $2 million drop in litigation costs. It wasn't perfection, but it was progress. During interviews, she often said the same line, almost like a vow. Accountability isn't a punishment, it's a promise. That phrase spread across social media, printed on banners and murals throughout the city. But progress didn't come without pushback. Some old guard officers resented the changes, whispering behind her back, calling her the reform queen. Olivia heard them, but she didn't react. Instead, she focused on results. One afternoon, she walked into a precinct notorious for misconduct and addressed the entire staff. "You don't have to like me," she told them. "You just have to do what's right." Silence followed. Then, one by one, they nodded. Respect wasn't demanded. It was earned. Again, in late November, Olivia visited the prison where Harlan was serving his sentence. Not for him, but for a new program she'd started, one that paired former officers with rehabilitation workshops for inmates. When she entered the auditorium, Harlan was among the attendees, sitting quietly in the second row. Their eyes met for the first time since his sentencing. He looked older, smaller somehow. During the session, he stood to speak. "I used to think authority made me powerful," he said to the room. "But real power is what you do when no one's watching." When it ended, he walked up to Olivia and said softly, "Thank you for not giving up on justice, even when it meant giving up on me." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Make it mean something," she said. Then she turned and left. That evening, Olivia stood at her office window, watching the city lights flicker. Chicago was alive, imperfect, but changing. On her desk sat a framed photo of her mother, her brother Marcus, and a new one beside it, Ava, standing at a podium, speaking about hope. Olivia smiled, her heart full. She whispered to herself, "Maybe the world can change after all." The next morning, she walked into her office to find a note pinned to her door from a young recruit. It read, "Chief Harper, I joined because of you. Thank you for making me believe again." She folded it carefully and placed it beside her brother's photo. And for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt since before the slap. Peace. Not from victory, but from purpose. The city still had problems. The fight for equality was far from over. But as the sun rose over Chicago, painting gold across the skyline, Olivia Harper knew she had done what she was called to do. She had turned pain into change, injustice into reform, and a moment of humiliation into a legacy of hope. Thank you for watching until the end of this story. If you believe that courage and justice still matter in today's world, hit like and subscribe. Every share helps remind the world that truth always wins.